I entered my room, locked the door, and went to bed in a turmoil of unresolved doubt and equivocal terror. I left the light burning, and I lay awake for hours, expecting momentarily a recurrence of that abominable sound. You're listening to Fistful of Podcasts.
Reach the
welcome to the show. My name's Dave, and this is a Fistful of Podcasts from FFOPradio.com. Back for another great week. This is not your usual episode. This is not a typical episode. I will not introduce you to either Adam or Andy. What I do have in store for you is a very special guest. With accolades and credits too long to list, but if you've ever heard of the game, like... So here's... Oh, man, I want to get into it so bad, but Darkest Dungeon, if you've heard of that game, you know of this man. It's Wayne June. Wayne, thanks for coming back on the show, buddy. It's been a while.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It's been like forever since I talked to you.
Oh, man, you grow up and things change and you have a kid and, whoa, your life just slips out of your grasp.
I have not grown up yet, nor have I had a kid, so...
I envy that. There's a special place in society for those people.
What does it? You mean we non-grown-up people?
Yeah. There's got to be people out there who have a childlike sensibility to keep us to keep the rest of us sort of fresh and refreshed every once in a while.
Well, it's more like a lack of responsibility.
Right.
And in my case, but
that's a necessity. So it's granted. But so Wayne, I want to talk to you about so many things, and I think that now we can basically classify, for me anyway, I've got Wayne June in two separate chunks. There is like before Darkest Dungeon and after, because if before you were a Wayne June fan, you got there via Lovecraft. And then when you started working with Darkest Dungeon, you just exploded all over Twitter. I couldn't believe it. You were getting ats and mentions and just like all these retweets and stuff. And you must have gotten tons of ink. So what was that like doing press and stuff for that game?
It was great. It contacted me to first do their trailer, and then the trailer worked out real well. And
obviously
got good responses and all that. And so then they decided they were going to write that character into the game. So that's how that happened. And as far as Twitter goes, I'd been on Twitter for a while before that, but it was one of those things where I opened an account and just didn't really maintain a presence there. It just sat there, and I didn't contribute to it. I looked at it like once every couple of months, and
I'm the same way still.
Yeah, see what it was all about. And then, like you said, it went nuts because of the association with Darkest Dungeon, the gaming community, which at that point I'm not a gamer, so I didn't even know it existed.
Oh my gosh.
They latched on to Darkest Dungeon, and I've made like 90 billion new friends from just from being associated with that game. So yeah, it's weird and great.
That's so awesome. I'm so glad to hear that. When that thing blew up, I was super happy because and there's a record of this. If you listen to the old show, I've said this before, but I was always saying Wayne June underappreciated, Wayne June underseen. And then Darkest Dungeon happens, and I'm like, yes, and I start seeing you just blow up. I'm like, this is exactly what I was hoping for. It took a little longer than I was hoping for, but it happened, man.
Yeah, it's been an interesting experience. Like I said, it's a whole new community that I wasn't even aware was there, and just a whole new experience for me. I mean, in terms of video games. Never picked up on it. I think I played something called Crash Bandicoot about 20 years ago, and that was fun. And then
I remember
I played Call of Duty a couple of times, and that was great, first-person shooter deal. But I never the bug never bit me in terms of getting me addicted to it.
I get that. Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
And it must have been so strange to be just like sideswiped by this fandom.
Yeah, and they're a bunch of nice folks too. I mean, they're not as.
Oh, I'm sure, but it like coming out of left field like that. I can't even imagine just like, oh, dude, one day, you do some stuff for a game, and people obviously, I mean, that game was tailor made for your voice, Wayne. Like, let's be real. Like, there's no dancing around the issue. Look at that.
The whole thing is very Lovecraftian, and
yes,
and that's by design. Chris Barassa,
Mm-hmm.
who is one of the partners in founders of Red Hook Studios, and he's the artist, and he's a creative director, and he wrote the script, and he is like he understands H.P. Lovecraft, and he's a big fan of H.P. Lovecraft, as am I. So when we first spoke, we were discussing the game, and it just seemed like I know exactly what he was talking about. He knew exactly what I was talking about. So I mean, it just clicked. It was in terms of being a voice actor. I think it was just a matter of good casting, because
it was just a layup.
Matter of fact, the way he, I probably told you this. No, I don't know if I have or not. Anyway, the way he got in touch with me first was like years before Darkest Dungeon. He wrote me a very complimentary email because he had been listening to the H.P. Lovecraft books that I recorded, and just wanted to touch base and say, hey, I really like that stuff. And I was like, wow, yeah, great, cool. And then here we are years later, to hear Chris tell it. He and his partner Tyler Sigmund, who is a game developer genius. I mean, he's got a million video games and board games that he's created under his belt. Yeah, these two guys are like serious triple threats, both of them. They're seriously qualified and talented, and so they were talking about the concept for the game, and they were like, we're going to need a narrator for the trailer. So, I'd love to get somebody who sounds like that Wayne June guy. Yeah. Who could we get? Who? Why don't we call him? Oh, that's a bright idea. So,
yeah, maybe.
So they called me, and the rest is history, as they say.
That's awesome, man. Yeah, I'm sure it sounds a very similar theme to our story. Like, that's how I met you. Like, that's how most of everybody I would push you as. I would say, this is the Lovecraft guy. So there's no other, like, the voice of all Lovecraft literature is in Wayne June's voice. and that's in the circles that you would run in. You were a big hitter, because it was like, there's still, I don't think, a lot of audiobooks of Lovecraft stuff that, do you know what I'm saying? Like, nobody, I don't think, gives it the gravitas because they don't have the connection to the material. If you like Lovecraft, you should, and obviously this can't happen all the time, but I think what gives you the edge in reading Lovecraft is the connection to the material.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, because he's a seriously dark guy.
Totally.
He, for all intents and purposes, really codified cosmic horror. Horror up until that point had typically been monsters, vampires, ghosts, maybe, nutty killers, that kind of a thing. And it was it was more of a view of the universe as we have known it classically is. As it is, and there's evil in it, and then along comes Lovecraft and slaps you up the side of the head by saying, "No, the universe,
it's even worse.
Doesn't have evil in it. It doesn't have horror in it.
It doesn't care."
That's right. It is horror. It is evil. It's not evil, really. It's just, it doesn't, like you just said, it doesn't care. It's
chaos,
mindless, chaotic, uncaring universe. And when you take that concept and run with it and think it through to its depths, that's about as horrible as you get, man. So,
And what codifies this notion, like in the shortest amount of time, like if you were to say, how would you come across with Lovecraft's arc in one short story? And now the name escapes me. I think it's The Crawling Chaos. It's the one where he's in that little house and the island is being swept away by the shore, and he's got that book and he starts screaming about tigers, and he starts by addressing the audient void. He's like floating around after doomsday.
wow.
And it's just like the perfect encapsulation, because he's like looking back and he's like, oh, they were trees, but they were weird looking. And that's all meaningless now, because I'm now just a dude floating in space talking to nothing. And I know that everything is meaningless and there's nothing I can do about it. Now, here I am. I'm just going to tell this short little story. And it's everything. It's hopelessness. It's cosmic. It's crushing. It's
every one of his stories has some element of that, some element or other of that. I can't think of the exact one that you're speaking of now, but I mean that
I can't remember the name.
That runs throughout Dagon, where he's he's out shipwrecked in the middle of the ocean. It runs through all of his stories. So to narrow it down, I'm not enough of an expert on the content to know exactly what story that would be.
I think if you're most Lovecraft fans are like, they're well versed on the greatest hits. Like, we could talk about Cthulhu or Innsmouth. I could go on about the Dunwich Horror. But if you want to sit down and talk about like Ex Oblivione or The Street or He or all these other weird obscure ones, I'm just like, I can give you like some bullet points, but that's it, man.
Yeah.
And some of them I don't even know the title. But that's the great thing about it, is you can let it get murky in your mind, because it's been disseminated into so many different corners of pop culture. It's like, what is the source material anymore?
Yeah, I know. It's he's I don't know if you'd say finally getting the attention he has always deserved. I don't know, but he's definitely popping up all over the place. I mean, major motion picture using his material as a basis recently, and
Shadow Out of or The Color Out of Space.
Right. I didn't particularly. I thought it was an okay movie or a good movie, but I didn't think it was particularly
Lovecraftian.
It wasn't really Lovecraftian, at least enough for me.
Yeah.
He tried to update the characters and bring it into, he made the main character guy who's married with a kid and, family life and that, of course, you can relate to.
It's impossible. Here's the. I know everybody said this, and it's hack and it's cliche, but it's still true. You can't film a Lovecraft story eloquently.
Yeah, I haven't seen it done yet. So
the closest is Dagon, and that's not very good. But especially like the Color Out of Space, it's told from a guy who's piecing this story together from other third party, and so how do you take something like that and express that in a you can't. Because you'd give too much away if you focus on the actual main characters that are going crazy in the house.
Right.
Like, nobody wants to see Nick Cage as Amy Pierce, who lives up the road, only to show up when things go cuckoo. So that's the thing. Like, the concept is there, but you can't focus on the main characters.
Yeah. And what do you focus on? Because when you think about it, most of his material, it's not really dialogue driven. So there aren't really a lot of characters. And what it's generally, the core of it generally, and in terms of its expression and its presentation, is usually first person narrative. And the guy is on his way to becoming insane. Because he is, or he's found something specific out, or he's beginning to suspect, or he's learning about, the ultimate emptiness of the universe, and
it's always, that's the thing too, it's always after the fact. All of his mythos cycle stuff, all of his dream cycle and stuff, all the rules are gonzo there, but like all of his mythos cycle stuff is always like after the fact. Perfect example, Harley Warren. The statement of Randolph Carter, I should say, because Harley Warren is the guy who dies, but Randolph Carter is the guy they're getting the story from. So the story actually starts with the guy who's actually dead now, and that's everything. Like Call of Cthulhu, it's removed and removed and removed by X amount of layers depending on the complexity of the story.
And by the time you get to the denouement of any given story, it's inexpressible. You can't even describe the horror, and then he goes on to try and describe it with all these arcane and archaic adjectives, and you get lost in his style, which is so beautiful and purple.
Yeah, it is very purple.
but how do you get that onto the screen? I mean, how do you express the inexpressible without ruining the whole concept of it being inexpressible?
Yeah, I think the problem is movies are about focusing on somebody who's going through something. You can't see it. Like maybe like Rear Window, you could say, is kind of like that. Like you're seeing a story via another perspective. But how many of those do you actually see? And also on top of that, it's these things that you can't picture, or also, your mind can do much better with this material than anyone who can put together any number of rubber costumes or CGI monsters.
Yeah.
And I think also, like, after a certain time also, his horror influence shrank, because I think when Carl Sagan and Cosmos was like, check it out, there's a huge universe and it's not that scary after all. He sort of softened the blow of infinity. I think that's when Lovecraft lost a little bit of his legs.
That's an interesting point. I never thought of that, and you're probably right. It still strikes me as being like pretty striking me right to my core. I mean, the pointlessness of existence. I mean, what is the point? I mean, you live X amount of years, and you live and you love and you experience, and then you're gone forever. You're dead forever from then on.
Right. But the world got small at some point. When the internet happened, the world got small and everybody got jaded.
Mm-hmm.
Infinity is no longer like, who cares? It's like everything is immediately available. I think all of the comforts of life have slowly stripped us of our horror, or even need to be frightened. Because like if you think about it, horror movies, notwithstanding everybody's current situation, I mean, they've never gotten a whole bunch of money, and they've been sort of dwindling, and there's like a huge indie scene. But I feel like as we get more comfortable and we learn more, and we're smarter as a species, it's harder to get scared about things, because in your mind, that's already been explained to you by Bill Nye, of all people.
He's one scary son of a gun.
Yeah, he's that bow tie, man. You can fly with that thing. But that's the thing, is like, the more you learn, the less you have to be afraid of. And so horror, I think, is probably the only thing that suffers from an advancement of knowledge. But it's still a bummer, because it's like one of my favorite genres. But this is the same thing I gripe about all the time. It's just, I think it's getting truer as time goes on.
Yeah. Well, I hope I haven't missed my opportunity, because I am finally getting around to doing something that I've been promising myself I'm going to do, which is gradually going to be putting out the entire Lovecraft fiction.
Awesome.
Recording all of it. And I also want to do a project with, his essay on supernatural horror in literature.
Yes. Yeah.
Well, I want to record that, and then whenever he mentions a story in that, insert that story there. So I think that would make a great audiobook. So
for sure. Oh my gosh, that would be fractally incomprehensible. What a project.
I'm hoping to get it done. I'm building a website now that's going to be for MP3 downloads and all that, and I've kind of hit a stone wall, because what I did was the last time I did any kind of web programming was like 2002 or something. HTML, it's all of a sudden 20 years went by, and I'm like, ugh. So I went to put up a new website, and it's like it's an entirely different can of worms now. So I've gotten thus far and no farther, and I need to find a web developer who can finish the project off for me. I'm like 90% of the way there. It's just,
all right.
Just,
I'm excited because I remember back in the old days you had the audio bookcase that I would go to.
Yeah.
But I would love, and that was part of it too. I think in the back of my mind, I always thought that you had already done all of the H.P. Lovecraft canon. And I would just find it eventually as every company sort of worked their way through it and got you for the role. But, it stops somewhere because there's a lot of stories I still have not heard in your timber.
Oh, yeah. I did, I think, did 3 volumes. I'm not sure how many stories were in there. And I'll be redoing those so that I can finally get it all in one place. Under one roof, and
that'll be cool.
Yeah. So if you know of any web developers, let me know. People who are freelancing and want to work on a website. I've got the design. It's just a matter of implementing it. So.
Right. Yeah. That's usually my stumbling block too, is the technical aspect of everything. I know how it should look and how it will look, and in the end, but I'll be damned if I can get it there.
Yeah, I got pretty far along on it, and then it's just like, okay, now I'm getting into all sorts of stuff that's just over my head with PHP and cascading style sheets and all this stuff. It's like, no, ain't as simple as it used to be. But.
No, and that's the thing too. Like, luckily, since the internet has bloomed and given us so many industries, you can find incredible work on Twitter of all places. Just be like, hey, I just offhandedly mention you need anything, and you will explode with replies, because there's people out there, and since the market has gotten a little maybe saturated, I think it's gotten a little more feisty, and people have been forced to hone their craft a little bit. They have to tighten up the old standards.
That's true. How many stories or whatever has H.P. Lovecraft did he write?
I think
so
I'm not sure the exact number, but I think I checked out. Someone had already recorded the entire fiction works. I think it was something like 60 hours worth, and I think I've done 9 hours worth. So I'm missing a lot. 60.
Wow.
Okay. Yeah, because that's, it's hard to, because he was a prolific writer. That's the thing, is he wrote and wrote and wrote and wrote. And you think, well, sure, he wrote a bunch of books. He revised The Shadow over Innsmouth 5 times and wrote tens of thousands of letters. He would use like circulars he would get in the mail to write letters to other people on, because he was so, like, he was just burning through paper. Like, this dude wrote.
Yeah.
So,
and he started when he was a kid. He has a lot of stories that he wrote when he was like a teenager, and it's obvious, but it's also interesting, And
and he was putting out like star or astronomy rather, like mimeographs to all of his friends and family at age 8. That's the dichotomy and the bummer of Lovecraft, because he wrote so much, but so little of it proportionally was fiction.
Mm-hmm.
And now you can buy like the collected volumes of his surviving letters and stuff, which is cool.
Yeah, definitely. It's because he corresponded with a lot of other
so
authors that were his contemporaries. Robert Bloch, who went on in later years wrote Psycho, is probably his claim to fame, as well as a number of features in Weird Tales magazine, and just a lot of his contemporaries that were sort of in the same bag. He had correspondence with, so that would be interesting in some regard.
It felt, diving into him as I did, it did feel kind of like a cool kids club, because it was Lovecraft, Loveman, Clark Ashton Smith would write them, Robert E. Howard, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, like all these old timey names, and like the two, like Sonia was in his wife Sonia Green.
Yeah.
They wrote a story together that was cool. All of his team ups were cool, even if they were cheesy and kind of crappy at times.
Mm-hmm.
It feels very like podcast of the time, very punk rock of the time.
Yep.
And that's why it's not died. Like, tell me, who was the most popular writer of 1922? I have no idea. I know who Lovecraft
I
is.
don't either.
Phew, he could have sold 1 million books and not a clue.
Yeah.
It's the niche stuff that'll pack a punch, and I think that's why I'm glad that you sunk yourself into that niche first, Wayne, before you blew up. So now you've anchored yourself into our culture, is what I'm telling you.
Okay.
Trust me.
I'll believe that.
When in the future, hundreds of years from now, they're playing, on spaceships, and they're listening to Lovecraft audio-wise, or maybe they're recreating it with holograms. It's still your voice, I guarantee it. $50 says they're still using your catalog to teach kids about Lovecraft in the future.
In spaceships and stuff, I don't know.
For sure. Like, the holodeck, they got tons of time. They got to learn about American literature still. There's still, there's kids on the Enterprise. Don't worry, Wayne. Don't worry. I got it covered. They will be listening.
Yeah, I guess weird fiction will have a place because there's always going to be weird people. So
yeah, and that's the heart of it. The weirder the people, the more diehard the fan, and the longer the thing lasts. So if you can appeal to the weirdest people on the planet, you have guaranteed maybe not riches, but notoriety, a long-lasting notoriety.
Screw that. I'll take the riches. Okay.
To each his own is what I always say.
Yeah, but if it's a choice between cash and something else, just give me the cash.
It's hard. It would be hard to say no. I tell you that. Mm-hmm. So, Wayne, are there any other projects going on? Is there been anything like you've been working on recently that's been interesting or noteworthy that you've been, we're all just kind of sort of shut in and doing our own thing, but somebody's got to be reaching out and doing something other than just me for this show.
Well, I got a number of audiobooks up on Audible that are doing pretty well. I did a series called The Hunger Series by an author by the name of Jason Brandt.
I remember that. Okay.
Yeah, and that ended up being a series of 3 audiobooks, and just recently we put that together and amalgamated it so you get all 3 audiobooks for 1 credit on Audible. So
oh, that's cool.
Yeah, so if somebody hasn't experienced that yet and they want to check it out, it's called The Hunger Omnibus Edition. And anybody wants to write me if they're interested, Wayne at WayneJune.com. I got a handful of free download things, so if they haven't heard it and want to hear it, just
that's cool.
Yeah, just write me, and if I have any codes left at that point, I'll be happy to give them out.
That's awesome. You've done so much for the show. Like, I obviously longtime listeners will know, but all the people who come back after our revival, they don't know the legacy of Wayne June. So maybe I haven't spent enough time on that because Wayne June is a staple of this show. He did The Bathroom Cougar. Wayne June was the voice of 1,000 trivia questions about Richard Petty. Wayne June has done so many things. You probably heard his voice right before this show because I sliced something he recorded for the show in already. And not only that, also the voice of my audiobook, if you haven't noticed already. And talk about a dream come true, Wayne. I mean, to snag you was just like, I'm like, oh my God, I'm going to get the Lovecraft guy to get my Lovecraft ripoff. Oh,
that was a very fun project and a very worthwhile project because found manuscript was just a great story. I
appreciate that. Because I thought it was a little hack, if you ask me.
I don't think so at all, because it was definitely in the weird fiction genre. And it was in keeping with, the standards of the genre and the standards of the time when that genre was coming to the fore. And that's not to say it was cheesy at all, but it had weird fiction flavor to it, in my estimation.
My whole goal, typically when I write, and this is literally anything, I always want to put it in the Cthulhu mythos. I don't care if it's like a funny piece or a comedy piece I have read for the show. I want to put it in the world of Lovecraft, and I have to restrain myself. But that was the thing. You have to walk that line because I wanted to write a story that was solid pulp and strange fiction and era appropriate as I could approximate. but also not constantly be tipping my hat too hard to Lovecraft and like out and out mention certain. Because I hate that. Personally, I hate it when it's overdone. It's like when you frost a cake, you know when to stop.
Right.
Like don't quit winking to camera, even though it's a book. Like I get it. You're in the same universe, and bravo. But I don't need to be so overt. Like Lovecraft was overt about many things, but he never called attention to the fact that he was like, "Yep, it's all the stuff that you remember. It was just a coincidence."
Right. Yep.
Like nobody. Like by the time what was it? The Shadow over Innsmouth popped up, and Dagon has been, a ribbon that runs through all of these stories. That character wasn't like gifted the knowledge of all his forebears and like, Dagon, haha, I know this guy. Next, and we just roll on to the McDonald's. Yeah. No, that you have to come at it in a vacuum.
Yep.
That just one of my personal pet peeves. I know there's a bunch of Lovecraft inspired fiction out there, and I've written my share of it. I'm sure you've done a lot of reading, Wayne, like, professionally and personally, I imagine.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think I've seen anyone take away from Lovecraft and elevate that sort of material. Like, you've seen the elevation of, like, the detective novel or random serials or romance novels. We've seen elevations and transformations of those things. But I don't think cosmic horror has literally come anywhere because people today are still referencing Cthulhuoids and the Innsmouth deep ones.
Yeah, just as far as the genre itself goes, I mean, it was fully expressed by a couple of other authors too. Most of them in Weird Tales magazine. I think Lovecraft was probably the best of them. But there's other stuff worth investigating there if anybody's interested in looking up the genre, learning more about the genre, maybe reading some of that stuff. Weird Tales magazine is the go-to for that. Mm-hmm. There's a guy on the web. I don't know if you're familiar with him, but Science Fiction and Fantasy Audio, SFF Audio.
Yeah. I've actually spoken to him. We've actually collaborated on a few things before.
Cool. Jesse is such a really great guy, and what he's been doing. What he's been doing on his website of late is finding public domain literature that's in the science fiction and fantasy category, and he scans the magazines and puts them up there. So I mean, there's
that's cool.
Tons of stuff to read for free. Just sffaudio.com. Jesse's.
You're right. There are plenty of unsung heroes that have run through those magazines that got nowhere, like those little bands that pop up and die, but still give you something good while they lasted.
Yeah.
And it's it's sad they ended up on this throwaway paper, this throwaway culture, and you had to be really outstanding to rise above. You had to be a Howard, you had to be a Lovecraft, you had to be, Clark Ashton Smith.
Yeah.
Things were just as competitive back then. Forget the internet.
Sure.
Like, you were trying to fight for inches in that little toilet paper magazine, man.
Yep.
At least back then there was a place you could get funneled. It wasn't like 900 different venues you could take your stuff to.
Another writer whose name just popped into my head, a guy who wrote a number of episodes of Rod Serling's Twilight Zone, if you're aware of that show.
Yeah.
His name was Charles Beaumont.
I'm not familiar with him.
He's worth looking up. He wrote some of the better and creepier Twilight Zone episodes, and I don't know. I'd have to look up, as a matter of fact, if he has stuff that is in print. If he wrote, got published anything besides the Twilight Zone stuff, but that's where I ran across him. And he's just super, super great in terms of being just weird and creepy. He also wrote other things for TV. He wrote a lot of stuff for TV, not all in that genre. I mean, he wrote for some of the popular westerns of the day and some of the cop shows. And
I think it was so cool that not all obviously, but a lot of those old pulp writers were able to just sort of pivot into that serialized, like The Outer Limits and The Twilight Zone and all those other sort of niche semi-horror. Like the fact that pulp lived on into TV, I think is super cool, and even arguably still exists today in some form.
Yep. There's I'm not all that familiar with the contemporary weird writers, but I know I've read articles.
It's hard to keep up.
Yeah, I know I've read articles that name some of them. The name China Melville comes to mind. You ever heard of that author?
No, I'm not. But I have to do it as efficiently as possible. So every once in a while, I would run into a bookstore and find the biggest, thickest book of new Lovecraft-related fiction and sort of refresh myself on all the newcomers and the old people to the party. And that's like the best you can hope for is like, if you find someone out of that, great. But if you want to keep up into sort of like where the genre is, you just got to sort of like, it's like bobbing for apples, man. Maybe I'm just, maybe it's my plebeian attitude, but I feel like writers even now are not getting, like, if somebody released a book today, I have no idea like how do booksellers like sell books anymore.
Yeah, I don't know. Good question.
Audiobooks I get because there's convenience.
Yep.
And you can download them and whatever, but if you're like me and you're still one of these like crotchety old men who's like, I want my book, how are we going to get at those in the future is my worry.
Yeah, I know. It's
but we'll see. Something's going to happen.
Yeah, it's got to balance out somehow. I mean, the same thing's happening in the music industry. It's just the internet has turned the artistic world on its head.
Yes.
And a lot of the corners of it here and there haven't caught up yet, I don't think. But. Yeah.
Well, let me ask you this, because now the internet is playing a bigger and bigger role every day, and more and more people, at least in my experience, anecdotally, I can say that more people are producing art. I'm watching a lot more free streaming concerts on YouTube. There's a lot more people producing content as far as like podcasts and videos and yada 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 yada. And I think it's because we're all a little bit tired of big box movies and stuff, and we want. Do you get what I'm driving at here?
It's also, I think, a matter of you don't have to at this point wait to be discovered or picked up by some big studio or hooking up with a big publisher. I mean, certainly. To enjoy that kind of success at some point or another, you're going to want to talk to those people. But
right.
But I mean, now the average person has a chance to be able to express themselves in their art and have a built-in audience almost, or at least a built-in potential audience of tens of thousands of people, so I mean, that did not exist not all that long ago, 25 years ago, that was not the case. So, and
it's so crazy. And I think what's also cool about everything is like, since everybody's just sort of like, yeah, man, we're in it together, we're going to pull together. Everybody has just sort of been like, we're in it. Let's do some concerts. Like this year, as bad and weird and strange and bonkers as everything has been, maybe the most artistically I've ever been exposed to things, simply because there are so many more people offering stuff, and I'm like, why not? Where am I going?
Yeah, absolutely. I was real happy to see one thing that came out of this whole thing this year is a lot of musicians, since they have, at least on a local or a regional level, have lost their opportunity to work for the most part. So,
basically, yeah.
So what they're doing is collaborating online, doing live streams. Yeah. It's about time musicians got on that horse. It's
totally, yeah. That's been around forever. Like, but maybe the quality wasn't there before. Like, I think now is a good time because you can watch your favorite musician from their bedroom from 1080p, like if they dropped $300 on a prosumer camera,
right,
and you're essentially sitting next to them because you can see every pore on their face as they play guitar. Like, it's never been, you could spend $200 to go see the Rolling Stones, end up in the nosebleeds and get stabbed in the back with a sharpened toothbrush, right, or you can stay home for free or almost practically free and see all of these artists who are like, we're stuck here. So Basically, you get to sit right in front of me and breathe into my face with your Cheeto breath.
Exactly, and it's a real experience. It's an experience of the musician being a musician, and it's not like what MTV was, which was I don't know. I always had held that in disdain because it just turned out to be a vehicle for
garbage eventually.
Yeah.
They're fooling around, making videos. The video aspect of it became the art, and there was a lot of good stuff put out if you look at it just at that. But I like music for music's sake, for the musicianship's sake.
I get that. Yeah,
So-
you're a craftsman, and you like interests like.
I wouldn't want to devalue video makers because that that filmmakers, that's a great thing too, but that's not what I was into music for. So I think that's coming to the fore now, and they're able to do it on their own terms, and it's not all that expensive anymore. The technology is much more affordable. The quality level is great.
Imagine this, Wayne. Imagine this. It's the 80s, and we somehow got the internet of today with the technology of yesteryear. So we've got big Super 8 camera, oh my God, just those VHS cameras, and we're all live streaming on CRTs, and everything's fuzzy and crazy. Oh my, I think we're probably getting to it at just the right time, because could you imagine the atrocities, all the winged hair and glasses that would be beamed across the nation and the world? Oh.
Yep.
Things are, I think now it's getting easier for people to make, but it's always been easy to make, kind of. Like, you would always make something. Like, even as a kid, I could always express myself in some way that wouldn't necessarily be palatable or whatever. But I think just the means to express it has gotten super accessible.
Yep.
So I don't think we're seeing an increase in talent necessarily. It's just an increase in people who have the drive to also tape themselves doing it, because I am telling you that can get old very quick.
Yeah, there's a definite stumbling block or a hump you got to get over when
right.
And I would imagine it's no matter what you're doing, because I can imagine just about anything. I remember picking up the guitar to learn, trying, and the first time I heard myself back at that, it's like, that's not what I intended,
Yeah.
And the first time I heard my voice recorded, to my first attempt at an audiobook or a voiceover script, you put those headphones on and you listen to yourself back, and you're immediately creeped out. It's like,
yeah. It's something you have to definitely get over.
That's not how you sound in your head. You when it's taped, you lose all the resonance that you can feel in your body. That's part of the experience that doesn't get put on tape. So there's that to get over. And I don't know, I haven't actually done it, because any experience or exposure to acting that I've had has always been in terms of just trying to learn, and I haven't actually acted, in a public forum. But I can imagine seeing yourself back for the first time has got to be just as creepy,
Very surreal. Yeah, that's the thing. Like, if I had to, there's barriers. There's prices for entry at every level of a hobby. And I think I've hit my ceiling as far as video. Like, if I had to watch myself, if I had to edit a video of myself and watch myself doing something, I can handle that. Live, it's whatever, because it's happening in the moment.
Exactly.
And when it's done, it's done. And audio took me a long time to get over with. Thank God I'm in love with myself, so I was able to get over that. But I had to struggle with my desire to talk to other people about things, while also coupled with the desire of never to hear myself speak aloud. But you gotta overcome it, because if you don't, then if you try and it sucks, at least you can point to it and be like, that sucked. I learned a lesson. But what if you're good? What if you're a Wayne June?
Yeah.
What if you're any number of these incredibly talented artists who just don't try?
You don't want to be me, believe me. That's why I know I'll never be possessed by the devil, because he'll get in here and go, shit, let me out of here.
Not much clout left in this one.
But yeah, and that's like one of the lessons to learn is like that's the stuff you got to get over in order to get as good as you can be. You know, if you never listen to yourself and get creeped out, then there's something wrong with you.
That's your first step.
And it's a valuable step because you'll learn what's wrong that way. You know, you'll learn what you're not doing right.
And you won't even, part of it is like you won't even realize it. Here's the thing I've learned, and I'm sure you have also working in your industry for so long, working around sound quality, control, check, mic, equipment, yada, yada, and doing this show. You don't think there's anything you can learn or get better at, but eventually everything you do becomes like a seamless one motion sort of thing. And that's when you realize, and everybody forgets this, you get good at literally anything you do. Anything you do repeatedly, you get good at.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And now it's almost like I can slide in here like a newt into a pond and get everything done. Whereas before, like let's say even like as short as like 3 years ago, I would be pulling at my hair. Clumps of it would be falling to the floor as I would be screaming myself hoarse to the top of my lungs. You need those breakdown moments to have epiphanies, which are they worth it? Sometimes they're not.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a stage you go through, and it's part of learning. And I think if there ever comes a point where you stop learning on purpose, then it's like you're
probably time to call it.
You're going to start going downhill pretty darn quick because especially with the speed of the technology is
oh yeah.
Just improving all the time. There's always something to learn to just stay current with your craft. I read a corny statement once, and it's always stuck with me because as corny as it is, it's true. It's like school is never out for the professional. So
yeah.
When you stop learning and stop going to school and stop absorbing changes and ways to improve, then it's like you've cut your roots off. You're not going to grow.
I think that's also like an awesome thing too, is like there's not only like creators of art, but there's creators of just like YouTube has literally anything you'd ever want to know and can teach you in any way imaginable. Every time I run into someone who's like, I don't know how to do this thing, and I say there's no reason not to, because there's somebody who's already done it and filmed themselves doing it step by step and have provided it to you for free. This is a perfect time to be alive because you never have the option of saying, I don't know how. Because you can. Everything
That's right.
You can now. No more excuses, lazy people. Now you have to say you're lazy. I do. If somebody, I have, full disclosure, people ask me stuff all the time. And they say, why didn't you do this? I said, I'm fucking lazy because obviously you want to have an endless amount of enthusiasm and capacity, but in real life, at the end of the day,
simply because of the reason that there is so much out there and so much opportunity to learn stuff, you have to focus at some point and
pick
draw
your
the
battles
line somewhere.
Yeah,
but yeah, that's. It's not like when I was a kid, boy. Want to find out something, you had to go to the library. It's like, it's true though. It's
I had to do that too. Like I remember having, I still drive by the library in town here and get weepy because I'll never be in there again. But forever I went in there. I was like, I need a book on reptiles. I need a book on blah. I need a book on this. Like that was it. It's like, so how like when, this is the most pedantic way to put it, but like when the Flintstones, they hit the button on the remote and the little bird flies slowly across the room and does the thing eventually. That was the library in accordance to the internet. Like if you wanted something, you go tick, knowledge, got it. If you wanted to learn something and you were below the age of driving, you had to make an appointment with your mother to take you to the library, grab that book, search through that book. And then this is days to weeks, people. This isn't milliseconds. This is days to weeks. And then by the time you get it, you're like, why?
I remember like having to look and getting like the little note card and having to like figure out where the book was.
It was
in the
insane.
library.
I remember for the life of me trying my hardest to understand the Dewey Decimal System. Never got it.
Oh, no, I didn't either. It's closest I got was I could go through the card catalog and find an author or a title or a subject, and it would somehow or other that would lead you to the shelf that it was on. But when it got to the numbers, I never really got involved to any extent with the whole system. But
The downfall was, even though it seemed simple on the outset, it was incredibly convoluted because I would never run into a library and bypass the card catalog. The card catalog is there so you don't have to remember the Dewey Decimal System. But my entire childhood was librarians and teachers cramming that system down my throat. And I'm like, number one, why do I need that? Because the number's on the card and the number is taped on the back of the book. I can read the same number twice. Don't need the system. Why even have a system? Just label them 1 to 1,000,000 and every library have their own thing. I'm not, obviously that ship has sailed, but I feel like that was a lot of effort wasted in my childhood where these frazzled librarians are like, no, if you want a biography book, that'll be in letter F. I know it's counterproductive, but it'll be like 7.7.62 is for James Madison's biography. And I'm like, oh my God, no, give me the card. Give me that card.
Just bring me there.
Yeah, or doesn't librarians exist? Also, here's another reason you would never need to know the Dewey Decimal System. Because there are librarians. I'm not Burgess Meredith at the end of the Twilight Zone. I have access to number one, the cards, but let's say that somehow caught on fire. Somebody ashed their cigar out in them like a Roman candle. They're never going to be unlibrarianed. And all you got to do is be like, hey, I need a book on the Gila monster. And she'll know because 1 out of every 1,000 people on the planet somehow can understand the Dewey Decimal System.
I've heard there's like waiting lists and stuff for people to become librarians in certain places.
It seems like it would be the perfect place for minutia.
Yeah.
Like if your thing is numbers and books and being quiet and telling people to scram if they get too rowdy. Librarian. Librarian, I bet, is like the scholastic version of a bouncer.
Ah.
Think about this, because your teachers, your principals, you can't bounce people out of class. You can expel them, and then there's a bunch of paperwork involved. If you're a librarian, someone gets rough, like someone's like, hey, I got a sandwich and I'm going to run inside. She gets to say, nope, hit the bricks, buddy. You got bounced. And,
that's right. It could bust you.
Yeah, 4'10", glasses thick as your thumb. She still has power over you, and she will use it. They're tough but fair. I'll give them that.
I'm just glad they didn't have tasers then, because that would have been just that much worse.
Yeah, the late fees would no longer be an issue, I believe. Oh man, I'm gonna miss libraries because I'll never have to take my son to a library.
Well, I mean, they like. He's young enough now. They do like the story times and stuff like that.
Right, but by the time they're basically shambling corpses of what they once were now. They are the libraries are the outsider. Yeah. They are stumbling around. They don't know they're dead. They're just waiting for that party to stumble into and find that mirror and be like, oh shit, yep, dead. And then blow away.
I guess one service they're performing now anyway is I guess they give computer access and internet access to those who don't have
maybe
them.
Maybe they'll pivot on into something else. But I don't, I feel like there's definitely some branding that needs to change. Like, because when you think of library, you think books, and those are going to be stopped being a thing. So maybe it's just it'll be like a big computer, like a big computer lab.
Yeah,
like you go in, you sign, you get the laminated thing with the key on it, so they know you're not going to run off with their floppy disks or whatever. You can play your Oregon Trail. You can play your lemonade stand. I'd go to that library. Mesa, if you're listening.
Well, what's cool, at least around here, and I think it's probably universal, is libraries have book sales now when they get certain, I don't know what their criteria is, maybe too much of this particular publication or whatever it is, or too much on this topic, but you can get like a huge box of paperback books for like 75 cents. So,
Yeah, we've taken them up on that offer. I've got books in my collection with the stickers of the Dewey Decimal System on it.
That's why you hate them.
I'm not trying to downplay libraries because I like them and I think they play a nice and crucial role for a lot of people. But when we're turning more and more away from physical media, we're just going to have to do that. We're just going to be like, hey, come on down to the computer lab, and there'll be the lady with the like the little over the shoulder sweater and the bun, and she'll sign you in and out, and there'll be an overhead projector and everything. I think that'd be great. Mm-hmm. Just a nice throwback to.
Plus, there's apps now.
Yeah.
That if you have a library card, you download the app. I think one's called Overdrive, and there's other ones. You can take out ebooks and audiobooks, and you never have to leave the house, which is that's a plus for me right there. I mean, this whole COVID-19 deal hasn't affected me in the least because I'm a wicked hermit.
I love that. I love that there are more options, but as a fan of physical media, I'm sad that library cards, like all those old nostalgic, and it's just garbage. You're holding onto it. It's just a piece of plastic or a piece of paper, but it's still like you're holding onto it, and it's like your connection to that thing.
Yeah, I can still, to a certain extent, miss reading physical books because I read it almost exclusively read on screen now. But I started reading when I was before I was born, and
really start
just that feel of a book in your hand and the smell of the paper and the print, and that still lights up a light in me somewhere.
Yeah, but you have to be exposed to it first. Like, if your first thing is a Kindle, then you're going to get nostalgic over, the whiff of ozone or batteries or something. You're like, man.
The smell of a fresh battery.
Yeah, you're like, oh, nickel hydride, that's Huckleberry Finn to me. I don't know. Something about, there's a disconnect there to me, man. I don't know. Maybe I'm old, maybe I'm cranky, but it seems like the kids just aren't all right. Oh my gosh. So Wayne, is there anything going on now that you want to point people towards? Anything that you are doing aside from obviously the upcoming website? And I want to be kept in the loop with that so I can spread the word as well.
Absolutely.
Is there anything else you got going on? Obviously, you can follow you on Twitter.
Yeah, that's Twitter or my YouTube channel.
Oh yeah.
I'm starting to get building up a community there. I could send you a link to it or something you could put up.
Yeah, I'll have links in the show notes for sure. Everything I get my hand on, I'll put in the show notes, and then I'll also, if you're listening to this before the live stream, I'll also have them in the live stream.
Yay.
Unless you're listening to this after the live stream, in which case you missed it. They were in the live stream. Next time, be there.
But yeah, and I still got those audiobooks up on Audible. I got Darkest Dungeon 2 is in the works right now. Starting to record stuff for that. Can't really answer any questions on it. It's kind of everybody's kind of keeping it close to the vest until it actually comes out.
I like that. It just means it's big.
Yeah,
that's happening. I got stuff I throw up on SoundCloud every once in a blue moon. I do music there as well as audiobook stuff. So
yeah, we never got into your music stuff. Wayne June has so many facets. Maybe we'll cover the music during the live stream. We got to hit that half of the career too, because I feel like that's as interesting, if not more, than all of the cool VO stuff.
Well, that was the first 55 years of my life, so.
So we'll have plenty to talk about, and I'm sure that I'm gonna see if we can get some Lovecraft type people in the chat and see if we can't get something going there, because me and Lovecraft, I could talk about it. So Wayne, thank you so much for coming on the show, man. You're a big get, and you've no reason to come on something this small.
Oh please!
But you did it anyway, and I appreciate it.
You're deluded, and
that's a popular opinion.
Well, the quicker your lovely wife can straighten you out on that score, the better off you'll be.
Oh man, yeah. So Wayne, thanks so much for everything you do. I can't wait to see all the stuff that comes out. I'll be keeping an eye on it so that our audience can keep an eye on it. Come by the Facebook if you haven't. I'm gonna see what I have left of yours, because there was some moving issues and I've lost a few of your recordings. So I'm bummed about that.
Well, let me know what we need to get back, and we'll work on it.
If you've got it kicking around somewhere, I think I lost. I found the Bathroom Cougar. That saved my life. The moment I found Bathroom Cougar, I was like, okay, there's something to keep going on for. But thousand trivia questions of Richard Petty, Gonzo off the map. So guys, this is all behind the curtain. You get to see this all behind the scenes stuff for free and in your feed, in your face. So also, guys, thanks for listening. If you listened, thanks for coming by all the live stuff. Wayne, obviously, I'm going to double down on the thank you for you, because giving us your valuable time, and then we're going to have some more fun later. So I appreciate it, buddy.
Yeah, man, I'm looking forward to that, and thanks for having me on. I really appreciate the attention. I'm a hog for attention.
I'm glad, because I am willing to dish it out. All right, guys. So until next week, thanks for listening. And remember, guys, be like Popeye.
For the try to
Fistful of Podcasts Radio.
This episode of FFOP Radio is brought to you by the Bathroom Cougar. Does this happen to you?
Someone's in here. Someone's in here.
With the Bathroom Cougar, scare off any would-be embarrassment before it has a chance to happen.
Oh, shit. I gotta get out of here.
The Bathroom Cougar, available at Best Buy and all fine retailers.